What a beautiful day it is today. I know a lot of you all are out having a great time in the sun. I cannot wait to get out and have some fun. Yep. Had a bad hair day last night. I stayed all night with mom. She kept me up all night last night. She literally was up all night last night. So I didn't have time to do my hair, but it's cool. I hope y'all are having a good Saturday today. This is a wonderful day that the Lord has blessed us with, and I'm looking for more days like this to come. So let's go ahead and get started. I have a great topic for you all today. Please, please, please like and share. Please like and share, you guys. We want to reach about 1,500 family members in the corner in 2024. So please do like and share. Also, check me out on TikTok. I've got a new TikTok, Karen's Inquisitive Corner, so check me out on that. I've got a lot of new things coming in 2024 that I'm really, really excited about, and I know you all are going to be excited also. Thank you, thank you, thank you for all your support the last 3 years, and thank you for the upcoming support that I know that you all are going to give me. I'm already very thankful for what's going to come. So, we haven't done birthdays in a long time, so let's do some shout outs to birthdays. So I will give a shout out to my friend Mitchell. Happy birthday. I love you. Let's see. We've got John Ladd. We've got Katrina Smith. Happy birthday. Melanie Davis. Happy birthday, Melanie. We've got Sherry Cuffey. Happy birthday. Now, if I pronounce that wrong, I'm terribly sorry. Darlene Patton. Hey, girl. Happy birthday. You're still just as beautiful as ever. Peggy Johnson Coffee, happy birthday. Susan Rawls, happy birthday. Martha Murray, when I grow up, I want to look like you. Beautiful. Happy birthday. Happy birthday. Melanie Davis, happy birthday. And Melanie Officer, happy birthday. So today our topic is going to be on ADHD. Attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. I know we have all heard about ADHD, more so in the last few years than maybe we heard in the past. Now, of course, this is kind of generational. Now, my daughter's generation at 27 have heard a lot about it. My generation at 61, we probably didn't hear a whole lot about ADHD back when we were growing up in grammar school and so forth. Well, when I did studies about this for my show today, it has really been around for years. Now, the names have changed, of course, several years, but the signs and symptoms have been the same. They just did not have the title of attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, okay, ADHD. So, in my research, I found out that a Scottish physician back in 1798 that he wrote a book about mental health back then. You know, in the 1700s, they looked at mental health very, very differently. But anyway, he actually described signs and symptoms of ADHD in his book in 1798. So who knew that it was way back then? So it's been around for a long time. Then the 60s, it was referred to as hyperkinetic reaction. And they were really looking a lot at children, can start as early as age 3. But then in the 80s, after they did more research and more studies about it, it actually came around to be attention deficit disorder with or without hyperactivity. So it can be attention deficit, meaning that it's really, really hard for the person with ADHD to focus on something, to give attention to something. When they start something, they don't usually finish it. And they can have hyperactivity with it, or they don't have to have hyperactivity with it. Okay, so when you look at just the general definition, ADHD is defined as an ongoing pattern of inattention, which is not able to pay attention, and or hyperactivity and impulsive activities, like the person just does things really impulsive, not really thinking about what they're doing. And these activities, the hyperactivity and the impulsive decisions that they make, and the inability to be able to pay attention, really messes with their everyday function. A lot of times, people with ADHD will have a lot of different jobs because they're just not able to stay focused on what they're doing. And they also have a lot of different friends because it's really hard for them to maintain a friendship. Now, what I thought was very surprising is ADHD is 3 times more likely in males than females. Now, another thing with ADHD, they have had a lot of studies. They have had a lot of experiments and tests and all that about it. So one study said that girls are usually diagnosed with other mental conditions like anxiety or something like that, like hormonal or something, before they're given the diagnosis of ADHD. That's usually what they look for. And doctors usually look for the definition of ADHD in males. That's why males have the diagnosis 3 times more than females. It's not so much that the females may not have it, but the males are diagnosed 3 times more than females. Okay? And also, I read that boys are actually targeted more with the ADHD diagnosis. You know, if they're hyperactive or whatever, they're going to look at boys, they're going to say, oh, that's what they got, ADHD. Now, to have the diagnosis, you can actually be as young as 3 years old. That's pretty young to be able to diagnose that, but it can be as young as 3 years old or as mature as 50, okay, to actually have the diagnosis. Now, as a child, if you had ADHD, then it's a 60% chance that it's going to carry on as an adult. Now, you may be able to control it a little better. You may be able to identify it a little better, but 60% chance you're going to have it as an adult. And if you get the diagnosis as an adult, then it's a huge chance that you had it as a child, but you were able to just mask it. You were able to make up for maybe the attention deficit because you were really, really, really smart and you made good grades and you read and all that. So you really was able to work around some of the signs and symptoms. But as you become an adult, you weren't able to. Usually there's a situation in your life, an event in your life, something happens that really, really brings those signs and symptoms to the surface, and you're not able to deal with them. But 9 times out of 10, if you get the diagnosis as an adult, you had the diagnosis as a child. Now, that's what studies say. Now, because ADHD is more defined now because of the studies and the experiments and all of the tests that they have now to determine if a person has ADHD. Well, of course, the diagnoses have gone up versus in the 60s or 50s or the 40s, okay? Because they did not know that much about it. But they're able to identify it more based on the signs and symptoms than they were back then, okay? So having the diagnosis sometimes can actually be misdiagnosed. Okay? Sometimes you can actually be misdiagnosed with ADHD. I want you to keep that in mind. So it's very, very important that as parents, as caregivers, that we really analyze our child or our loved one's behavior to see if they fit into some of these signs and symptoms and really understand the results of tests that identify that the person has ADHD. Now, some of the things that the person would go through, I'm not going to name them all, but I'm just going to name some of them, may include being forgetful. Okay, they're going to be forgetful. People are going to complain that they don't listen to them because you might tell them something and then they'll come back and ask you, what did you say? Well, I do that now, but what did you say? They're often late because they're not really considerate of anybody else's time. So they're often late trying to get there. Also because they're disorganized. Okay, they're trying to get dressed, they're trying to figure out what they're going to wear. They may put on 5 or 6 outfits before they get to where they're going. They also have, as we said earlier, trouble concentrating. So they have a hard time actually focusing on one thing to get one thing done. So they may start something and not finish it and go back and start something else because their attention span stopped on that previous activity. So they have trouble concentrating, especially for long periods of time. Like I said, they leave things undone. They have behavior issues as a child. That's that hyperactivity. They won't sit still. They can't sit still. They start getting into things that they shouldn't get into because a lot of times, in some instances, teachers are not able to focus on that child with ADHD or the hyperactivity like they should because that child is interacting with everybody else in the classroom. So sometimes it can be challenging for that teacher to put in things that she needs to do to help that child maybe not be so hyperactive, which can go into behavior. Also, impulse control. Okay, they'll just do things impulsively, meaning they just don't think about it. They'll just do it, and then they'll suffer the consequences later. And of course, getting organized. Now, usually with children, you're going to see more hyperactivity. With adults with ADHD, you're going to see more fidgety. Okay, they're going to be fidgeting a lot. And of course, ADHD does not just happen overnight. You just don't wake up one day and you have it. Okay, like I said earlier, as a child, it may be easier for you to cover it up, but then as an adult, something will happen where you're not going to be able to hide those symptoms. So again, scientists don't really know how ADHD starts. And since we've been in the corner for 3 years, I have really been surprised at how many diagnoses and illness that we've talked about that scientists really don't know where it starts or really don't know where it comes from. Some of the educated guesses, as you will, for ADHD is genetics. That usually if your mother or father had ADHD, then the child is going to have ADHD. Now, the thing about it is you have to think about older parents that may have had it as a child, but they didn't get diagnosed. So there's no record that they had it. So their child comes up with ADHD and they're like, wow, where did they get it from? Because the parent was never diagnosed. But some studies say that it is genetic, that it's going to come down from the parent. And another study says that the dopamine in our brain, and we've talked about dopamine in our brain, that controls our movement, our motivation, our ability to accept rewards for what we've done. And it also affects our learning and our memory. Now, another theory is that the dopamine in the brain decreases, which increases the hyperactivity, the inability to learn, the memory, and all that. Now, this is a theory from a study. Also, another one that I read says that usually people with ADHD, their brains are actually smaller than people with that don't have ADHD. Now, again, that is a study. Nothing is final. They cannot say this is where ADHD comes from. Okay, all of these are hypotheses that are, quote, educated guesses based on studies, experiments, and so forth. Now, some of the treatments, I thought were really interesting because these are some treatments that we've talked about in the corner just for everyday things. These are great treatments just to adopt, okay? Like, don't get trapped in negative thinking. That's something that we should do anyway. Don't get trapped in negative thinking. Don't put yourself in a position around negative people. We've talked about that. Sometimes you have to give people the benediction. Lord, watch between me and thee while we're absent from one another. We talked about that in the corner. Another thing that we can do is think about your reward. Think about being rewarded for what you do. Now, a lot of times with ADHD, that is called behavior modification. So, in other words, if you start a project and you finish it, then I'm going to reward you for it. So you have something to work forward to. But if you start that project and you don't finish it, then you're not going to get to go outside. So that's called behavior modification. We are trying to modify your behavior by rewards or not giving you rewards. Another thing you don't want to do is you don't want to wait until you feel motivated to do something. Okay, make yourself get up and do it, because sometimes people with depression, ADHD, you're never going to get motivated to do anything. Okay, so sometimes you just have to push yourself to do it. I know I do that. Just push yourself to do it. Push yourself to get up and walk. Push yourself to get out of the house or whatever. Another thing that you want to do with ADHD, you want to make a planner. You want to plan your day. You want to be able to write things down. I told you this is a lot of good stuff to do, just to do, even if you don't have ADHD. You want to write things down, okay? Another thing, don't set your expectations too high, okay? So if you're working with a child or an adult with ADHD, take baby steps and reward them. Take baby steps and reward them. You know, when you have a checkoff list, and you have 10 things on it that you need to do, when you start checking things off that you've done it, even if it's 2 things out of the 10, it makes you feel good. And it makes you feel like you have accomplished something. That's the same thing with working with people, children with ADHD. Okay? Learn how to say no. How many times have we said that in the corner? Learn how to say no. Not doing it. Why? Don't want to do it. Learn how to say no. Okay? Another thing they do is they give medications and they give stimulants to kind of speed up the body system, which speeds up the learning, speeds up the memory. Okay, so they'll give them stimulants to speed up their body to try to help overcome the part of the body where they have the attention deficit and so forth. And then, of course, we talked about behavior modification and counseling. Definitely counseling. But before anything can be fixed, of course, you have to admit that something is wrong. We've talked about that. And just because it works for me does not mean that it works for you. Your child may have ADHD. They may have different signs and symptoms than somebody else's child. So don't always compare and say, well, my child doesn't do that and they have ADHD. Well, my child does do that. Everybody is different. They can have different signs and symptoms, and they can both have the diagnosis of ADHD. Now, as we close, the CDC estimates that there are 8.7 million adults in the USA diagnosed with ADHD. And in 2016, there were approximately 6.1 million children. Now, as we said earlier, the numbers have increased because we know more about it. We're able to treat it better. We're able to identify the signs and symptoms than we were back in the 60s. But I also want to say this. We've talked a lot in the corner about mental illness and the stigmatism around mental illness. Well, it's not really a stigmatism around ADHD anymore because we talk about it. I mean, it's everywhere and it's talked about very openly and very freely, like a lot of mental illnesses. So that stigmatism has also gone down, just like mental illness. Now, some people still have it, of course, but we're going to let them have it. But a lot of the stigmatism has gone down and people are talking about it more. But I do want to always remind you, do your research. Okay, when you go in there and you talk to your doctor, counselor, whatever, they work for you. You don't work for them. So make sure you have a list of your questions. Make sure they explain it to you in terms where you can understand. Okay, take all the time you need because you're paying them for it to understand this disease or diagnosis of ADHD, especially if it's somebody that you love or your child. You want to be able to understand it. You want to be able to know how to modify it for your child so they'll be able to be more productive as they grow up and become adults. If you get the diagnosis as an adult and it's your loved one, you still want to be able to understand it because you want to be able to help that person through difficult challenges that they're going to have in their life because of the diagnosis of ADHD. So I hope you learned something. I always learn something when I bring things to you all. I want to know what you all want to hear in the corner. I've got a lot of guests that I need to bring in to get in here. So we're going to make it all happen in 2024. Now, what I want to leave you all with today is what I know that I know that I know. So what I know is antidepressants work. You all have a great day. Mwah. This is Karen Scruggs Briscoe, Pat Jack's baby girl in the corner, and I will see you next Saturday. Bye-bye. Please like and share. See ya.